you. And a big thanks to NBI for sponsoring and being a part of this incredible coalition, being a part of COP28, being a catalyst for many organizations to start to pull together with incredible purpose to start to make a difference and to do a lot of orchestrating. And this panel, we're going to talk about from experience through IDH Sustainable Trade. We're going to be looking at finance. We're going to be focusing on the Southern African Food Transformation Alliance and some of the lessons around collaboration, some of the calls to action around sustainable funding and impact funding, and what we need for real food transformation. My name is Steve Carver. I am from You Can Grow Africa. Our business is to grow agripreneurs and farmers of the future. So an incredible privilege and pleasure to be here from a farming perspective. And farming evolves everyone. Every time we sit down for a plate of food, all of us are in agriculture and all of us are in a food transformation process. So this is something that involves all of us globally and also has massive local appeal. So a huge welcome. And what I'd like to do is do a very quick intro to some of the panelists. On my left, I have Didi. She is one of the executive partners of Calio Capital. She's the CEO of the Nala Fund. And then next to Didi is Keba, who is a global executive with IDH around transformational value chains and supply chains. And so we've got an intimate conversation, really looking at some of the challenges in Southern Africa, some of the lessons learnt, and then we're going to end with some of the actions and calls to actions for all of our different collaborators and players. So again, thank you NBI, thank you for the venue, thank you for the collaboration and the partners. And Didi, if I can just get you to give a little bit of your background, some of the passions. You can take that, Mike. Just give us a little bit of an introduction and an introduction to some of the listeners and the viewers that are watching this.
Thanks, Steve. My name is Didi Ntleleketi, and I'm the CEO of the Nala Sustainable Agri Fund, which is a private equity opportunity for investments in the agri sector. The fund's objectives are really around, inclusion and ownership of agri assets in South Africa by what we deem emerging, developing Black farmers. The impetus of the fund is to provide investors with sustainable financial returns whilst reducing socio-systemic risk. And by socio-systemic risk, we've got clearly defined social returns objectives, which speak to job creation, preservation of jobs saved. It speaks to skills development for Black farmers, access to market for Black farmers in terms of our environmental returns objectives, soil conservation, the use of clean energy, as well as optimal water utilization. So it's a triple bottom line approach with sustainable financial returns, social returns objectives, as well as environmental returns objectives. Thanks.
Fantastic. I love this concept called a safe pair of hands. And I think when it comes to finance and investment and a lot of your experience and what your organization's philosophy and values stand for, it's very much a safe pair of hands, but that's on the financial side. Someone who's had global experience in developing radical collaboration and pulling organizations together into something that is very purpose-bound is Mr. Keba Colley. Keba, give us a little bit about IDH around the background of the Southern African Food Alliance, because you've set up over 15 years a number of alliances through the IDH. Tell us a little bit about what IDH Sustainable Trade does and what this is behind the Southern African Alliance.
Thank you, Steve. I like the word radical collaboration. Where are we? We are in Dubai and we are at COP28, where all the discussions around climate change and how we as Africa and the world can work together to reduce, all the stuff that they're talking about. For us, this goes far beyond climate. Climate needs to go with food and food systems. And it's really important for us as IDH to be able to have this collaboration across Africa, across the globe, to enable the transformation of the African food systems on the continent. If you look at, in general terms, what Africa has been doing, and all the numbers are showing that our population is growing, and still we are importing. I think the African Development Bank's data is like a minimum of 50 billion US dollars of food importation, which is fine for those countries that are sending food or selling food to Africa. But for Africa, in the wake of war in Ukraine and COVID and all other disruptions because of climate change, it's very important that we are able to grow at least our staple food, the most important food that we eat in Africa, in the individual countries. If we are able to master how to produce enough of that, we wouldn't be able to be dependent on importations. For, if you look at regionally in Southern Africa, it's the maize and a number of other crops that are in decline in terms of domestic production. And so companies like Unilever, which we know very well, they've approached me as IDH in 2000. What was that? Now, April, perhaps February of 2022, saying that we, as Unilever, would like to see collaboration, so that radical collaboration in South Africa, where the food companies, so this is retail and trading companies and the brands like themselves, Unilever and Tiger Brands and Distels and whoever, to work collaboratively to enable transformation of certain value chains in Southern Africa and in South Africa. And for Unilever, it's important that this is done through partnership. So it's not something that they would like to do alone. So is IDH interested and willing to come to South Africa and to support and set up this collaborative? And that's basically where we started this conversation with all these companies, with your support, as You Can Grow Africa, partnership with you to enable this alliance to kick off. And I think 12 months or 15 or something like months later on, we were able to launch the alliance in Johannesburg in June of this year. And most importantly, we've got the financial institutions, Didi sitting here with us, and a number of others. We've got input providers, we've got the companies that are willing to work together, and of course, by signing the covenant, which is one of the building blocks of the alliance, it's enabling all of us to be accountable for what we've signed for. And as IDH, we are coming in as an enabler, as a convener, but also as an implementer to lead the work in South Africa and Southern Africa to start with. And then as we move forward, this alliance will become independent alliance, and it will be on its own feet. And we will be able to, as IDH, to be partners, but not lead it, because this has to be led by the country, by the countries itself, by the companies that are in there. My role in this and my team is to start it up and to make sure that it is a functional, it becomes basically not a company, but an organization, so to say. And as you know, Steve, that the alliance needs to go with financing. If we are to set up business in South Africa to support emerging black farmers in South Africa, so when I say black farmers, it's important to distinguish. It's not the farmer that we look at. So, of course, the farmer, but it needs to be beyond the farming. It needs to go to commercialization. It needs to go to industrialization. So how do we grow these small SMEs in Southern Africa so they're able to produce the food, able to produce the ingredients that Unilever is interested in and looking for? This is basically what we have signed up for. And I'm so pleased that I have you, the three of you, the two of you with me, and plus many others that are home in South Africa. This is a collaborative effort and need to be radical.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. So there are four different objectives to this alliance. The one objective is with the challenges of carbon and climate change, all of these things is organizations have to work pre-competitively to actually handle something that's bigger than all of them. The second one is around how do we make food affordable into the future, which is really engineering supply chains that can make food match the market and create deeper sustainability for all of those factories. The third one is around livelihoods and how do we encourage transformation in new emerging farmers, in black farmers, in women in agriculture, in youth in agriculture, and how do we pull that together? And then the very, very last one of all of that is, do we have the future of nutrition? So it's really around the quality of food going into the Southern African Food Alliance. I'm going to give you an opportunity. Do you want to just share some of your slides very quickly around IDH, around the Alliance? I think it's probably easier if you're up on this side. And there's your...
Oh, okay. I think you can hear me, right? Oh. Blackboard, okay. All right. Thank you, Steve, and thank you all. Maybe just a quick, IDH was set up in 2008, and it was set up by the government of the Netherlands with the objective for the Dutch, European and Western companies to work together and to create shared value in the countries and continents where they purchased and produced food mainly from. So we're speaking cocoa, coffee, fruit and vegetables, and a number of other commodities that the Netherlands, as a country, is very, very good in trading. Perhaps some of you would already know that. And also in production technology of agriculture, as well as knowledge development. So IDH was established then to be able to support those companies that do business in Africa, just single it out, to enable the shared value, which means you don't go to Africa, or you don't go to another country, one country in Africa, like in South Africa in this case, and buy and leave, but how do we develop partnership? How do we develop knowledge sharing? How do we develop and enable some of the companies and people to be able to benefit from the trade that's happening? And so, as you can see here in the slides, what we do is to transform value chains and transform markets, specifically value chains. And myself, as Global Director for Value Chain Transformation, my responsibility together with the team is to support, let's say, African SMEs. So if you just look back and imagine Africa, where most of the companies that operate in food space are not indigenous African companies. They are the big companies that have global brands, that have money to establish factories across Africa. And a lot of them would have factories, but then will need to import most of what they processed. The ingredients that they process need to be coming from outside of Africa. And because that's happening, it means that the agriculture sector in Africa, specifically for emerging farmers or black farmers, and the companies do not benefit much from that opportunity because they're importing the ingredients. So our role as IDH, and that is to grow the African emerging businesses so they can produce, semi-process, and supply to the factories of the companies like Unilever. This was the question that Unilever asked. Because what they're doing is, if you take spices, for instance, most of it is imported. And they would like to create a sector in South Africa where the primary production and semi-processing is done, so they will be able to do the final processing in their factories, which means what they will do is processing, branding, marketing, and selling it to either in Africa or elsewhere. And so in this space, we as Africans, and in Africa, we are not participating to our full potential. And that's what IDH is there for. So we have these 3 areas that we work in. For me, personally, and for all of us within IDH, what we believe in is that we need, in Africa, we need to have our own FMCGs. I assume we all know what FMCGs are. And those are the Unilevers and the Tiger brands. We need more of Tiger brands. We need more of those African companies. So if you take as a European company or European country, the Netherlands, for instance, where we are operating from as IDH, that country has enormous amount of food companies. But you will always see 2 or 3 that are responsible for 50 to 60% or even 70% of the food security in that country. As long as we in Africa do not have that opportunity, it's very difficult for Africa to be food secure. So South Africa, that has become my adopted country, at least the past 15 years that I've been working there back and forth, it means that most South African will not be able to provide or buy food that is nutritious enough. They cannot go to Woolies, they cannot go to Pick and Pays on a daily basis to buy what they want. So they have to resort to other things. So how do we enable that the average South African is able to buy the food that they want? And that food should be affordable, should be nutritious. That's the question. And that needs to go with technical business development, that it needs to go with financing, and it needs to go with market. And that's what you see here. If we take the SMEs in South Africa, I saw some numbers like very, very low that the commercial farmers in South Africa are producing up to 90% of what is consumed in the country and also exported globally. So only probably less than 5% of the black farmers in South Africa are contributing to the food security in the country. These are numbers that are very scary. And so with this alliance, the whole idea is to enable the black farmers' participation in the food production in South Africa. That's the whole idea. And we're using this model, which means the first one we do is this partnership. So the transformation, having this partnership with this alliance, where the off-takers, the Unilevers and others, the dynamic intertrades and so on, and yourself, Steve, you can grow. How you, as you can grow a company, is able to work with the black farmers and to incorporate, basically bring them into the formal market, into formal supply chain. That's the first thing. The second thing is we have to look at, from a transformational agenda, there are a certain crop, a certain value chains in South Africa that need to be transformed. So when I say transformation, is that most of that is currently imported. If you take maize, maybe not palm oil, but palm oil is also consumed in South Africa, but it's mainly imported, so the environment in South Africa is not conducive for that. But let's stay with maize. Maize needs to be produced and need to be processed, and because it's a staple food in South Africa. If you do not have enough of that and you depend on importation, when COVID hit and there's a war in Ukraine, or when you have wheat, for instance, a country like Nigeria, where we also work, Nigeria consumes about 600 million metric tons of wheat per year. That country is huge, about 200 million people. And the total value in terms of importation of that is $1.5 billion US. So now war in Ukraine, the prices are staggering, and the government goes and saying that now we need to declare a weed transformation in Nigeria as a matter of national security and national emergency. So we as IDH, we are working with them now, with the weed companies, to increase that production of that. So that's one example. The second one we need to do is the technical and business development, because as much as these farmers are extremely resilient people and they want to be commercial farmers, at least some of them, the challenge is always, if you don't know how to do things, it's very difficult. So we need that collaboration between commercial farmers and the current farmers, the black farmers, the SMEs, to be able to transfer knowledge, but also that helps in terms of market penetration for the emerging ones. Then the third one is the seed capital, because we know if we do not have enough money, and when I say enough money, is that these SMEs, there are maybe two challenges that they face. The first one is, when I start up, how do I do the basic stuff? How do I get that going? The second one is, now that I'm going, I need working capital. I need small mechanization. I need to build a small processing plant because I've got maybe Pick and Pay or other retailers really want to buy, but I need to scale my operations. But the amount of money that they need is not, say, 50 million rand or 100 million rand, 200 million rand. It's usually in the brackets of 5 to 20 million. And that amount of money, it's very small for commercial banks. Maybe not you, Didi, but if you go to ABSA and other banks, for agriculture, they would ask for much more. They will prefer, I should say, more than that small money. So this seed capital that we're setting up, it enables these companies to take that small amount of loan, number one. Say it's 5 million rand or something like that. It's very small money. So not small, but you understand what I'm saying. In business, it's not a lot of money. And that enabled these companies to use that working capital. Working capital meaning if you're to buy input, if you're to buy raw materials, you need that money. And by doing that, you're able to put that up, put it in your processing plant or whatever it is, and sell it. So that increases your capability, but also increases the credit history and capability of that company to be able to be seen as a serious business. If we don't do that, these companies and these SMEs will remain very small, and they will not become the FMCGs. So for us, it's very important to have that combination of the finance, technical, and market development. And this is what the Alliance is going to do. So what we're bringing in as IDH to Southern Africa, is our knowledge and capability, but also some financing, this seed capital, as well as some of the other instruments that we have to enable the transition to happen and the transformation to happen. If we don't do that, it's going to be very, very difficult. So setting up the alliance, when we were asked, and now Steve, you, Mary, myself, we started the conversation, and what we said is, actually what I have been warned several times in South Africa is that there are so many organizations that everyone is talking and everyone is doing this. So how is this going to be different? That's a very good question, right? So for us, what is important is if these companies are committing, they need to invest. They need to be held accountable. They need to be able to show results, and we have to work in a collaborative effort. If we don't do that, it's just going to be talk, and nothing's going to come out of this. So what we agreed to do was the alliance needs to be built on these blocks, as you can see there. I can't see very well, but unless I put this. But what it is the covenant, which means all the parties, the companies that have agreed to be part of this alliance, must sign this covenant. The covenant is a legally binding document, but it's a public statement, and it's very important because it
it held the participants or the members to account. And this also allows us to work with a third party. At the moment, we're working with EY. That is going to audit these companies to say the agreement is by 2033, 80% of what you produce in a factory must be coming from local sources in South Africa. So black farmers and commercial farmers and regional countries. That's the first thing. The second one is you as a company have to invest in your supply chain. So who you are supplying as you can grow or will supply, that company, be it if it is, let's say, Distell or Heineken, they also have to invest in that transaction, which means they invest and you invest, and the farmers, the processors that you will work with, and preferably the black ones, will be able to have the opportunity to have a line of the retail or off-takers, processors, and themselves, and then you have the input providers. It enables these guys to be in a professional and a commercial transaction, which is very, very important. So by doing that, the alliance basically means that you can have several partners working together in one transaction or one program, one project. That's the first thing. The second one is we need to put more emphasis. So the alliance itself, we will have a secretariat or a company that will have specialists and staff that are going to be deployed and working with the black farmers and processing companies more interactively. So on a daily basis, that means that the technical capability that these companies would need will be built within. And so you don't need a consultant to come in and tell you this is what you need to do and that person is going to leave because you can't afford to retain that person. What we will do is with this alliance, we will have those people that's going to work with them to transform knowledge. And then we have companies like Unilever that are also committing extremely into knowledge transformation. That means the commercialization and all the professionalization that is required, we will be able to get it through the alliance. The third one, what does it say? That's the seed capital. And that's where you come in, Didi, right? If we provide that small money, what I call small money, it's not small money, but you understand what I'm saying, the 5-10 million, if you look at it from a euro point of view, which I do, is not a lot of money. And so banks don't really take interest in that amount of money because you're speaking 200, 300, $500,000. What they prefer is 3 million, 5 million and above, which is much more than the 5 million rand. So if we provide that small money, basically money that to transition them, that will enable you as NALA to pitch in more, and maybe the ABSAs and the net banks and the other banks that we are in talks with, because we want all of them to be with us, to be able to provide more financing. Because now you got to market, which is the Unilevers, you guys, and then you have the technical, and then you have the seed capital. It's basically part of the de-risking model. And this needs to be coupled with a learning agenda as the last point. The learning agenda means what we're doing here needs to be shared within the alliance, but also outside of alliance. I know, having read many reports, and also the South African government's plans for agriculture transformation, that learning component is very important because we will not expect anyone or everyone to be part of the alliance. But there will be those that we can work with, even though they are not part of the alliance, and that learning component is very important. We can support government, we can support the private sector's efforts for this transformation, which has, at the end, several impact areas. We have job creation, food security, nutrition, and most importantly, you will be able to afford food, and we don't have to be dependent fully on importation. So I don't use the word of import substitution because it's not possible. In my view, there will be no country that will sustain itself without import. I don't think so. So it's important to make sure that what I'm talking about is important to make sure that what we, and I think I'm South African now, to eat is produced, most of it is produced locally. Then you have a food reserve for at least 6 months or something like that. If you take countries like this one that we are in, it's pretty much dependent on food importation. But if you see the remarkable technical transformation that they're going through in terms of food transformation and producing locally in this country, it's amazing. So it's something we can learn from them. It's something we can learn from what is happening in the world to be able to be implemented in South Africa and Southern Africa and Africa as a whole. And when I'm saying, speaking for local production, I know I'm exceeding my time, that it's very important to think in 2 or 3 layers. The first one is Southern Africa, the South Africa. The second one is Southern Africa, SADC. The third one is Africa to the world. We have to also think of export. If the entire world is busy working on how to compete at the global level, we as Africans, we need to be prepared also. Export, it enables many, many things, including foreign reserves, which is very important to the government. Then we'll have a stable rand, for instance, as an example. And agriculture is not the biggest or will not be the biggest contributor to the GDP, but it plays a huge, important role, which we think we can do in this alliance. At least we can be part of the enablers and support the transformation. That's what I had to say.
So I loved what you said at the end, which was for me very, very powerful, which is how does Africa feed Africa? And then how does Africa feed the world? And I think that's an incredible true north. And then I look at the size of the Southern African Alliance is there are 400 million people in Southern Africa. It is an enormous area, and ironically, it's the size of the states with the same population. And yet, we don't have the same funding, but America was built by small business, and America was built by transformation. So when it comes to how do we get the finance, and how can that finance really be impactful, I'm going to jump across to you, Didi, is you talk about governance and you talk about blended finance. Tell us a little bit more about your thoughts there.
Thanks, Steve. So I love the slide that Keba shared around the seed capital component, access to market, skills development, because that is what our mitigation strategy is. Every time you talk about investing in black farmers and emerging farmers, it's firstly, you need that equity, the 80-20 rule. No bank is going to give you a 1 million rand loan and say, yeah, we hope you pay back one day. You got to put in that 20%, right? Second one is access to market. So by bringing in these huge corporates, these FMCG companies, your retailers and wholesalers, now you've actually got your market and your off-takers. So these are very strong mitigations. Yeah. Another big conversation, specifically in South Africa, when you refer to black farmers, is the skills development. That these guys, can they really produce sustainable yields to actually meet their off-take agreement? Because if they breach that, then we know that the contract then lapses, and then affordability and ability to pay back the loan, is a huge risk. So with these components, and this is why the alliance is so important to us, because it covers all of these components in terms of mitigation, and then black farmers become fundable. Because we understand that in South Africa, there's this dualism that exists within agriculture where you have your third, fourth white generation farmers who actually own commercial value chains of the agriculture sector. And we have been on this journey trying to actually see and innovate around how do you actually bring in these black farmers into commercial value chains. And we believe that this is the answer. From a governance point of view, Calio Capital, we've been around for 12 years, so we've got a track record, we've got existing assets under management, We've got a very strong team from our advisory board. These are, policymakers who contributed towards our agriculture, processing master plan for 2030. Some guys that used to sit as executives on these, your Coca-Colas, McDonald's, Heineken and the likes. And we've got an independent investment committee, which is led by the ex-CEO of Current Beef, which we know is the second largest beef producer in the Southern Hemisphere. So very strong team that's executed, in over 10 billion rands of, agriculture deals. So, yeah, I hope I've answered your question.
Definitely. So one of the things that I see is as you grow farmers, you need a certain amount of grant or philanthropic finance, and then you need to slowly grow that into the commercial. So you're growing the future timber for the big banks.
Definitely.
How are they coming back in to say, we want to grow successful customers into the future? Because this alliance is a business-led alliance. So do they see those kind of linkages?
Definitely, because like I mentioned to you, that the biggest gap now in funding a black farmer is first the equity. It's also the issue around land ownership. Black farmers don't own the land. Most of them operate on CPA land or long-term government leased land. Also, the issue of access to market and skills. So the moment the land bank has left a huge gap in the financing continent in terms of agriculture in the country. So what you have is that you've got the commercial banks offering senior debt to your farmers, your production loan. You require that collateral. So the moment you say, no, I don't own the land, guess what? You need another product, an insurance product, which then makes the cost of funding very expensive. So through this, the seed capital. So you need that blend. You need the support of some cheap capital, cheap grants that go in there to cover the equity collateral. You need a bit of, prime less than sort of debt, to get these farmers to start creating history. Because the moment you have at least 2-3 years history, then you start complying for senior debt with the commercial farmers. So basically, we're trying to actually bridge that gap that the land bank has actually left in our market,
So we see a lot of this with our You Can Grow farmers. So we have a precision growth model, and we look at how many off-takes can we get for a farmer so that when they're starting, it's the basket of finance of off-takes that they have, and it's the basket that grows them. And I think it's a similar way in your blended finance, but it's also building balance sheets.
Definitely.
So I think that very often what we do is new knowledge, regenerative farming, really looking at climate farming, the right seeds, the right water savings, all of this knowledge and learning, when we start sharing it, is leapfrogging new farmers into being far better farmers than what we had in the past. So there's big catalytic opportunities. If I come to the alliance and I look at Keba, you've been building alliances globally. In Southern Africa, what excites you the most about the Southern African Alliance? I know that it's not for sissies. I know that it's tough in the beginning, getting people to collaborate, getting people to see the business value. What are some of the things that you're looking for into the future? It's been born, it's in its infancy. Tell us about some of your dreams for the future for the Alliance.
Steve, I accidentally landed in South Africa in 2008, as I told you at one point. I was not supposed to be going to South Africa. I was going to Nairobi. I was in Dakar for work, and I was to say their name, Kenya Air was cancelled twice. The only route to Nairobi is Dakar to Dakar to Johannesburg, and Johannesburg to Nairobi. So I called the travel agent in Amsterdam, and our travel agent is the only route there is a South African Airways coming from, I think it was from Washington or something like that. It's landing in 2 hours, so you need to rush from your hotel to the airport. In 2 hours, it will take off. So that's how I ended up in South Africa, accidentally. when I got to South Africa, the Kenya Airways was cancelled twice, so I had no choice but to go to take a hotel somewhere in Santa. That was my story of South Africa, and then the rest is history. What happened in these past, 15, 16 years now? Or 15 years? Something like that, yeah. What has happened is that for years, I have been traveling the globe with my previous employer, developing supply chains. And our business in South Africa was, at the time, around 110 million euros. And we were doing this from citrus, in, PE in Eastern Cape mainly, and then you have in Mpumalanga, then you have, I know it's a long answer, but I think it's the context I'm bringing here. And then you have, table grapes, and you have wine, you have avocados from Limpopo, and so on and so forth. So I just look at the environment, and all of that is coming from the white commercial farmers. There weren't any black farmers that were doing business at the time. And yet, when you are in the world that we are in the development space and business development, most of the donors would say, well, South Africa is a self-sufficient country from a food production point of view because they're supplying the world. Yes, they're supplying the world, that is true. But then you have the other part, and now this is interesting, this book that was recently launched, A Country of Two Agriculture Sectors. So that goes to confirm that there's a lot of work to be done in South Africa from an agricultural transformation point of view. I mean, you're talking about land that I know nothing about, but when it comes to business itself, the emerging, what Mary will call the next generation farmers in South Africa, it's such an interesting opportunity, but also this is so timely, whereby you have so many black businesses. So one of them is Anele and Tabisa in the Alliance. You know, the people who have no agriculture or agribusiness experience, all of a sudden they just popping up to set up a company to start processing. So for me, what gets so interesting is how do we use our network with the commercial farmers and get the commercial farmers to collaborate with the black farmers to enable the transformation of knowledge from those guys to these guys. Because it's something that the country needs. Mm-hmm. You can talk about the white commercial farmers being very successful. If the black farmers are not successful, your country is not successful. Mm-hmm. So you need that transformation. For me, that's really, really the opportunity that I'm seeing. And then you have these bold guys and ladies that setting up financing like you, Didi, and of course the Anela and Tabisa with their radical transformation agenda to enable Eastern Cape produced at least food that is essential for that part of South Africa, because the land is there and everything is there. There's a lot to be done in South Africa. And if you look at SADC as a region, obviously you have companies like Tiger Brands doing some business in Zambia and some in Zimbabwe. A lot of it is not to develop to the level where they want it to be. So the business opportunity from a financing point of view, from a knowledge and technical business development point of view and market, it's amazing what can be done there. Mm-hmm. So for me, this is where I see it's just so interesting.
So I love this fact that around de-risking, around finance, around business-led, around pulling the markets together, it's making agriculture sexy for agripreneurs. And I think that gets it very, very exciting. So you start to see here is an opportunity. And it goes back to this African proverb, it takes a village to raise a child. So this alliance is essentially the village to raise future farmers and to leapfrog them into being the best farmers in Africa. So I have a massive thank you to everyone, and thank you for us being here. I'm going to give you guys a chance for final thoughts or final actions that you would like to see. Didi, I'm going to start with you. Any call to action? What's the call to action to the world out there? What's the call to action if you could have your wishes? What would you like to come from this?
Steve, I always want money. On a serious note, though, we're looking to actually raise funding. We mentioned that it is a blended finance approach. So we're looking for patient investors for our equity fund, which is the Nala Sustainable Agri Fund, but also some co-funders and co-investments to come alongside us. Because I believe that this is actually a really great story that we're telling here. Like, I liked what you mentioned around building a balance sheet, because that's what we are.
Yeah.
We are looking for institutional investors to invest in our fund in order for us to invest in commercially viable agri-businesses and aggregators. And the role that that will do for the Alliance is also bring in the skills development to actually integrate the black farmers into our ecosystem. And there's a great social and environmental impact return here. You know, we've got 4 pillars that, you know, are driving our investment philosophy. The first pillar being sustainability, you know, from financial sustainability, social returns objectives, environmental returns objectives. The second one being climate change risk, understanding that these commercial farmers need to transition towards your best practice agri practices, which speak to your regenerative agriculture practices, the use of optimal water utilization, understanding that water is a scarce resource in South Africa. Our farmers are struggling a bit with water infrastructure. The third one is technology, the use of technology to actually provide you, one, as a mitigant for yields, but also to provide you with, you know, that extra alpha to improve yields, productivity, profitability. And the fourth most important, why are we doing what we're doing? To enhance food security. South Africa we produce more than we consume. However, you've got a 3-year-old child that goes to bed every night without 3 balanced meals in her tummy. So these are issues of inclusion. And how do we bring black emerging farmers into this ecosystem? Because I think we'd be a much better country. Yeah.
I love that. I remember the movie Jerry Maguire, and it's show me the money. And he says, no, it's Kwan. And he says, what's Kwan? He says, Kwan is love, respect, community. The whole thing, that is the Kwan. So I think there's a beautiful Kwan, and it's not just about show me the money, look at what that impact can do. So I love that. Keba, your call to action or reflections or thoughts?
You know, Steve, when you asked Didi the question, I was thinking, what should I say? I think the most important is let's talk to the government. Is that the cameras are looking? So government, anyone is listening. This is something that we need to do together now. South Africa is an amazing country. There's so much to do. But it's just like any African country, everyone says about this potential, there's potential, there's potential. Okay, but no one does anything about it. So what is the use of your potential? And so if we can have the government, close collaboration with the government, and then we have the private sector. Obviously, we have some of the private sector companies with us, but we need the bigger ones, the white commercial farmers. We've been speaking to many of them, and the interest is there. We just need to make sure that it works. I also think that important for all of us, the emerging businesses, the processing companies, we need to look at the transformation agenda. We've been helping small farmers for generations. Billions of dollars has been spent in this space. They still produce this much as they did then. Now, how do we move from that small production to enabling business? Let's bring business into agriculture. The ones that are trying to process and to produce, they're the ones we should be looking at. So the SMEs need to grow for us to be able to have our own FMCGs, our own more of Tiger brands across Southern Africa and in Africa, and
That cannot happen if the government, with their policies, with their support, and the private sector putting in hands together, and the willingness of those with knowledge and technology to actually be part of the whole process. This, for me, is most important.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. And then from a You Can Grow perspective, we love the last four letters of being an African, which is I can. And so the minute people realize that it is the time of Africa, there is this massive renaissance happening, but it's happening in agency and it's happening in dignity by entrepreneurs. And we're seeing amazing farmers through the You Can Grow that start as small farmers but become the mega farmers of the future. And so this is really around better business. It's around how do we look into the future and how do we unlock this talent. And you only get as far as your friends. And I think this, for me, is the most exciting thing, is to have the orchestra conductors that are global conductors that help convene and pull really strong partnerships together, which is IDA Sustainable Trade, to have NALA and people that aren't just about the bottom line and this, they're actually interested in the storyline. They're interested in the prosperity journey of the families and the businesses that are coming together to build a transition, and more than a just transition, an amazing leapfrog happening in Africa and Southern Africa that we can take to the rest of Africa and then to the world. So again, an enormous thank you to you, a huge thank you to you guys. Such a pleasure being here and being a part of NBI. An amazing privilege and a huge thank you. Any questions or anything you guys would like to ask? Yes, and I love the Zimbabwe, proudly Zimbabwean. Datenda Shamwari.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Just to start with a comment, I'm Tawanda Shamyadira. I'm from Zimbabwe, yes, of course. And we are doing regenerative agriculture in Zimbabwe and in South Africa. In South Africa, we have about already farmers who have committed to joining our program with about 179,000 hectares currently, still growing. And I really am excited and I'm welcoming very much this initiative. And just a question that I wanted to find out, are there ready projects for the Alliance to employ the finances that are being raised? And has the Alliance identified possible partnerships to assist translating the whole idea that is being shared here into something that is implementable or into an implementable case? Then the last question will just be that, is there financing that is ready right now for us to share within some of those communities? Because all the communities that you are describing, we are on the ground and we know that you are saying exactly what they are asking for. So it is a very positive initiative, and it is something that, you know, I think everyone, if they could be hearing what is being discussed in this panel, they would be having all the hope that they can have in this transformation of the food systems that we're looking at. So I just wanted to pose that question, then maybe perhaps I'll have a follow-up question after getting a response from there.
Thanks very much. So there's a big statement and a massive thank you, because I think you had 3 questions in there.
Yes.
And the first one is all aboard. We need all of the supply chain to start to be a part and to say that we want to be a part of the Alliance. The Alliance is business-led, so very often what we do is we start with off-takes and work the other way around. And because it's business-led, it means that all of those off-take agreements and all of that commercial business can be banked and can be sorted out, so it really helps farmers and it really helps grow farmers, because this is not a quick fix, it's a long-term commitment. The covenant says we're here seriously to play, and we're going to play literally not just 10 years, but 20 years, and these targets are important around localization. Do you want to just touch on some of the finance and where we are at the moment, and just some of the financial opportunities that are coming?
Okay, so I mentioned that as NALA, we invest in commercial agribusinesses and aggregators. And we understand that livestock is actually, you know, what they call the sleeping giant in Southern Africa, because of the amount of herd that is sitting with black farmers but not actually reaching markets, whether export markets or local markets. So we are interested in livestock. However, we're only going to look at our commercial farmers. The seed funding that is available and the grant funding will go to black farmers with the intention of actually being an off-taker. At the moment, we are lining up some existing projects, and we're more than open to actually sitting down with you and understanding your projects, where these farmers, the size of the transaction that you're looking to raise, with the intention of maybe closing at the end of Q1. But to say that we'll look at your project and give you a yes, no, and disperse by next week, no, I think by end of Q1, we'll be in a position to do disbursements.
That's fair enough. Thank you so much. So I think I won't be able to ask the follow-up question because
We'll get your details.
Touched, you understand?
So we're keen to work together. Yes.
Definitely. I'll also get your details. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much. Thank you very, very much. And to my panelists, well done.
Well done to you, Steve.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot, and thank you to NBI and the guys in there.
Thanks very much, guys. Thank you so much.